Hi everyone, it's Grant Abbott speaking, and welcome to this probably pretty revolutionary session as far as I'm concerned, and probably many of you as well, in relation to digital assets. Many of us probably aren't really aware of what a digital asset is. For example, if I die, my LinkedIn effectively passes, and there's certain criteria around LinkedIn. But you may or may not be aware that all your followers on LinkedIn, and I've got 10,500, are actually part of a database and have some intrinsic value that my executor could well and truly utilize for that is exact value. In fact, it's probably worth more value than everything else I've got. So from that perspective is that when we die or we become incapacitated, we need someone to come and step in. I've got a little article up here from Forbes magazine, which was in November, and it talks about Bitcoin. And we've got here from Billy Bambra, it'd have to be IT person anyway, reports of Bitcoin's demise may have been exaggerated, but everyone who's currently hold Bitcoin is going to die one day, unless obviously AI comes to the rescue. What happens to our digital remnants when we die has been a problem the likes of Facebook and Google have already had to grapple with, but digital currency like Bitcoin makes the problem far more pressing. Now, UK-based CoinCover, founded just last year, has teamed up with Palo Alto, which is Silicon Valley headquartered Bitcoin storage company BitGo, to offer Bitcoin and also cryptocurrency wills, hoping to solve the problem of what happens to your Bitcoin when you die. When we have a look at that side, it is a very big issue for all of us, what does happen. And really, as you can see, there's startups that are actually going down that track themselves. And looking at building wills and crypto wills and digital wills. Now, from our perspective at LightYear Docs, we want to be in front of the curve, as you do as well. We've started moving, and if you've gone through our wills already, you would have seen that social media always plays a part at our upper level will. We've got two different wills. We've got our LYD will, which we call our basic will, and I think we need to probably rename it. And then we've got our LYD will with testamentary trust. The important thing about the one with the testamentary trust is that's where all the really big stuff is with social media. It'll be their digital assets as well. So we're working pretty heavily, and I know Ashleigh's on the call, and she's our digital asset queen, and she's starting to build processes and systems around that. I want to give you a heads up of where we're going. And of course, like anything, we'd love to have your feedback on how to incorporate and build this into the total framework. Because when we die, not only is it a problem of accessing a lot of this stuff, and you're going to be surprised when we go down the track to show what is digital and what's social, but more importantly, is there intrinsic worth there for the executor? And should we have, in fact, a separate digital executor or a separate digital EPOA? So these are some of the things that we are thinking about at the moment, and love to have your feedback. And again, so we can start to move towards releasing this, which I would expect would probably be in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So again, it's a new offering in Australia for that matter, and really, as you can see, that it's only just rolling out now over in the States in Silicon Valley. So if it's only starting there, it's generally not encouraged, looked at around the world. So what we're going to do is look at how to cover. Now, again, for those of you who were here yesterday, I did quite a long session around SAPEP, and SAPEP is effectively succession, asset protection, and estate planning. And really, that's all about the family. And the 3 elements there about being a SAPEPer, which is us as advisors, is to be able to protect, secure, and grow. After all, we're in that family advice business, and we're putting a moat around all of our financial and family's financial wealth. And from that perspective, by having that moat around that, our digital assets are well and truly in that moat. It's interesting to see if anyone under a family provisions claim would ever litigate that. But anyway, it would be one of the first things that I would have a litigation at. So we're there to protect and secure, which is absolutely crucial. Now, digital and social cover a lot. For example, as I said, LinkedIn, being part of LinkedIn really isn't the big deal. It's more about the the email names and addresses and the contacts that I've been able to garner from LinkedIn itself. And if you think for anyone who's successful in business, most of you there, you've got quite a successful database or quite a sizable database there that people have been interacting with you down the track. So as a consequence of that what happens to that LinkedIn database? Because I've got, as I said, over $10,500 professionals on that, and presumably I have a bit of a tried and trusted name or brand name out there, a personal brand name. So again, it's not so much being a member there; it's what is intrinsically involved in there. Same with Facebook. Look, Facebook for me, I don't really use it to any great extent, but I know that there's a number of people with huge Facebook groups. What happens to the Facebook group? And for example, just going back to LinkedIn, I set up the SMSF Advisor group in LinkedIn, and we had something like about 1,500 people to that. When I sold out to Now Infinity, that group was actually passed on to Now Infinity. But again, that's got an intrinsic value. What happens to all of those if you're sick, if you're incapacitated, or effectively you are dead? And I would dare say that you went to your, if it could be worthwhile, imagine going to a suburban lawyer and just say, look, I really want to look at a will to looks after all my digital assets and stuff like that. That you just see this blank stare on their face because they'd have no idea where to start. But for many people, their digital side of their equation is a fact where a lot of the value of is basically worth, let alone executors knowing what to do. So we need to lay down a plan, a track, a real strategy of what to do. Even ComSec, all the shares that we have in there, who gets those, if it's not just on death, but who actually gets the, who has that powers of attorney over that, who has the logins, who has the right to trade. I can tell you, if you don't get that, it's a big issue. Here, of course, we've got all our, on the left-hand side, you've got all our different cryptocurrencies. You can see Bitcoin, and there's a whole lot there that poor old Grant's got no idea about, but looks pretty flash. And I've got a really good story about that shortly. Twitter, of course. Look, Twitter, I don't think we can posthumously post from Twitter, but if you have a look at someone like, and again, I hate to raise this because it's always a polarizing issue, but someone like Donald Trump, who's got 65 million followers, if he gets booted out of office, in November, effectively what will happen there'll be certainly a lot of value for him going down the track with all those followers. Look, anyway, you're probably going to see Trump TV or something. Anyway, Zero, of course, is another one as well. These are all just basically anything that goes up into the cloud or uses the cloud can effectively is made our life easier, but it also can be a killer for us. Here's a nice little article. Again, this is a Bloomberg article. Questionable death prompts call to exhume Quadriga CEO's body. Skepticism around the demise of Canadian cryptocurrency exchange founder Gerald Cotton just won't go away. The questionable circumstances behind the death of Quadriga's chief executive last year in India at 30 led lawyers representing customers of the collapsed trading platform to request on Friday that his body be exhumed. When he died, the whole exchange went down and $170 million basically just evaporated. And you would have heard that last December. But you can just show that this is the exact frustration. And having to go and get his body exhumed is absolutely crazy. I mean, even what they're trying to do is actually prove that he died. And even if he did die, it still means that everything effectively has been lost. So it's a crazy scenario. As I said before, how many lawyers who used to doing our little last will and testament on parchment effectively are still mired way back in the 1800s. Really, wills haven't changed that much. Some of the ones I see that people say to me, like, I did this 10 or 15 years ago, and it looks okay to me. I don't really, I don't really understand why I need to upgrade. Well, here's the deal. From me, there's 4 levels. Like when you're training for a skill or an understanding, there's 4 levels of a skill. So the first level, which is the basic level, or is where we are unconsciously incompetent. And for example, generally most of our clients would actually fit into that particular scenario. And the reason I say that is that they just don't know. So if I ask someone what happens with their digital assets, they would have no idea. In fact, many of them have done wills, just giving assets to one from one person to another. And then even then, if they die, they might say, okay, well, it's to be split amongst my kids. But you say, well, do you want it to go to their children after that or not from their children? I'm not really sure around that one. And I think that that's absolutely crucial for that, is that, you know, where would we go? We've got to start to plan these things. And this is all about succession. So when we talk about succession, it's not only succession in terms of our family trusts, in terms of our self-managed superannuation funds, or in terms of our estate, but it's also succession as we go down the track. And I think that's pretty important. So, I mean, really, how many lawyers do we know that are really on top of this? So when I go through, and really for us is, you know, do we want to be at the front of the industry, or effectively, this is my new term, Covidified. And Covidified is down here, you can see there, the laggards. And the reason I say that is that how many accounting, financial planning, other firms were very late to the party, or not even the party at all, that effectively when COVID happened and everyone had to spread out to their offices or the home offices, that they hadn't gone to the cloud. So a lot of information was sitting on the servers and there was no facility to work at home. Now that was absolutely disastrous for many businesses. Again, they were the laggards. Remember the people who said, oh, look, it's too dangerous to go to zero, it's too dangerous to go to cloud because of security issues here and there. And then suddenly COVID comes along and wipes them essentially off the map. And the same thing where we want to be, we don't want to be Covidified. You know, you're on this journey with us as a SPEPA to be down at the early adopter. You can see where we are. We're right down to that innovation level, talking about digital assets, talking about social media and building systems for it. And then obviously you guys are the early adopters taking advantage of it. And when we start building this system, when we start building processes, and when we start doing client communications, when we release that, again, that will show that you're going to be at the forefront of the whole equation. And for those on subscription and licenses, you know, there's no extra cost for this. This is just part of being a part of the platform. Anyway, what is a digital asset? So if we have a look at it, obviously our email accounts. So I've got probably about 10 different email accounts, and embedded in those, there's a lot of information that sits there. You know, what happens to those? Do they just simply die? Who takes control of them? Who is going to be looking after those email accounts? Generally, they don't stop once you die. The executive will take control of them. The problem about it is there's a time zone between death and when the executive effectively gets appointed, there's probate, and that could be like 3 to 6 months. If that's the case, who's actually looking after all this stuff in between, particularly if they're business email accounts and you're in a small business? Same way with blogs. You know, who owns the copyright to the blog? If you've got a really good blog that's sitting there, who's actually going to take part of that? And when you're having a look at doing your will, are you going to start to split these up so that my blog can go to my son who's working in the business and all my email accounts as well? I mean, should these actually be part of the will, or should we actually have almost like we call an inter vivos disposition, you know, putting these into a family protection trust prior to death, so they're actually catered for in there and they live on past death, which seems to me to be having a lot better maintenance there, as long as we limit that family protection down to our bloodline. Social networking websites, I mean, it's important, but really seriously. Anyway, look, there's people with Instagram that, you know, make a lot of money, but you know, for an Instagram, look, anyway, that's the thing. Online backup services. So if you've got information sitting up online, and I've got information effectively online since about 1998, you know, who owns that? Is there any value in it? My first book, The Guru's Guide to Self-Managed Super Funds, you know, is there any value in that? My last book, you know, the Guru's Guide to Self-Managed, sorry, the first one was just the Guide to Self-Managed Super Funds. These all have intrinsic value, as does the writing. I've done more than 1.5 million words around self-managed super funds and strategies. You know, who gets that? In fact, the more I go through this, the more I'm starting to get a bit scared, actually. So Ash, you better hurry up and help me out. Photo and document sharing websites and G Drive, Dropbox, etc. Same thing is that when you have a look on our website, the main thing, I think certainly one of our key features is having that vault for all your client files. How does that carry on? Where does that fit down the track? Financial and business accounts, zero. If you're in Maya, all of those, what happens to those? The big one is domain names. If you have a look at it, I think I've got around about 180 domain names. Who gets those? Are they valuable at any point in time? If you have a look at some domain names, the ones that have been picked up 10 or 15 years ago can be worth millions of dollars there. Virtual property, computer files, and again, subscriptions such as zero. So digital assets covers a whole range of anything that really is can be set down into information. Even this very presentation that I'm doing, because it is so far in front of the game, this itself has some intrinsic value. Okay, so let's go through and have a look at our plans for some of our digital assets. We already cover, for those of you can see down here, for those of you who've been through our interview on our LYD Will and Testamentary Trust, we already cover social media there. I put that in early days because obviously it was quite important. And I had read a lot of stuff around in vivos wills, or what we call a living will, passing this on prior to death. And effectively, there's a great little link there you'll find in there that talks about the directions for executors, etc. here. So it's a really good resource there. But for example, you have the ability here on my death, my social media accounts will be maintained by my son, Max Smith, according to the following directions. So again, it's in there, but again, it's not exhaustive. When you start to have a look around, just the same way as you have specific gifts of the investment property go to Max, my car to go to Max's children, this island over in Vanuatu, that'd be nice, wouldn't it, is to go to my daughter, Sarah. All of those things are specific gifts. It's the same thing we've treated our social media accounts as specific gifts as well, which can be included into a testamentary trust, which is why we put it up into our more advanced LYD Will with Testamentary Trust. Once you start going down this track with clients, I went a bit far, clients who are unconsciously incompetent, that they just don't understand. And even at the next level, the same with us is, the next level is being consciously incompetent. So around this digital space, I would say that all of us, probably Ash is more in front of everyone else, that we're all consciously incompetent. It's like, gosh, this is such a huge thing. How are we going to cater for it? What are we going to do for this? And is it important for our clients? Well, I'd say, if you're looking at someone who's over 60 and you're doing their will, maybe not a huge impact, but certainly for anyone under 60 who's had quite a sizable business career and has all of these values there, it is quite a big issue. Our next stage is once we go past this and we start to build this will, and again, it'll be in this will with testamentary trust. Effectively for that, what will happen is we'll become consciously competent. So we'll really understand the nuts and bolts and how to do this right from a granular level. But then the next one from that is when we're unconsciously competent, which if you have a look at, if you ask me a self-managed super one question, which I encourage all of you to do, I can cut through the wheat and the chaff and the fields and get right down to the meat of it and come up with solutions very quickly. But I should be, because I've been there for 25 years or so and been right at the cutting, not the cutting edge, but dealing with solutions and problems day in, day out. So they're the 4 levels. As I said, most clients are probably at that unconsciously incompetent level, and I would certainly say around digital assets, 99.9% of people drafting wills would also be at that unconsciously incompetent level. And that's even scarier, because then that leaves the executor high and dry, because they've got no idea where it fits into the whole scheme of things, or whether they can realise. I would say that probably most of the estates these days don't even look at it and effectively just shelve those assets. Here's not a bad idea, guys. Find out people who've got big LinkedIn followings, etc. And when they die, go and purchase them off executors, because they won't know the true value of them. Anyway, that's a bit of a vulture thing, but anyway, it's someone will end up doing it, I can tell you. Probably not here, but certainly over in the estates. So we, as I said, social media, this is our first start, but certainly not the end. In our digital assets for EPOAs, it's the same sort of element there. You probably see that we're moving down this track and certainly well and truly beyond anyone else. All the EPOAs I've seen are always just linked to, the attorney can do anything both personally and financial that the principal can do. Now, what we've done is we've put in place, obviously, the replacement trustee and replacement director, and then also alternate director where the principal's the sole director. And we've extended that out now to include any directorships that effectively we can, our EPOA can take over as an alternate director, provided, of course, we've got that combines with resolutions from the company to accept that alternate director in the future when the principal decides that they no longer want to act as that director. And again, this is a run of the reason we want to do it upon signing of the documents. So we will have here, and we'll have another little button that goes down there, which actually talks about digital assets as well. So with the new interview questions, this is what we're looking at. And again, if you've got any issues around that, have a chat with Ash. So Ash at ilovesmsf.com. If you keep in touch with her, and look, I know you guys are super smart, so make sure that you are right in the front of the game and talk about some of the issues, because unless we resolve it all, it's always going to be less than perfect. And our motto at LightYear Docs is not only to be in front of the game, but also to be perfectly in front of the game and make sure our compliance is an issue. And also gives you guys something different, because it now means that when you come across, if you do have a client and they've got a will, you say, well, does that include digital assets? Does it include social assets? As soon as you do that, it blows apart everything else that they're dealing with. So Tim, I've got Tim, you're always bloody tough. What's the best method to keep passwords updated over time? Ash, are you there at all, or? Ash, maybe she's not. Okay, so passwords over time, I can only just go by myself and also our business. We keep in a login of all of our clients, and Ash said she's going to send something out to everyone else. But I know that we change our passwords every 6 months, possibly every 3 months, particularly if you have staff going to and fro. So I think that's pretty important. And just bear in mind that it's very easy to hack these things. And if you've got some ne'er-do-wells from Russia or Eastern Europe, you've just got to be really careful and be on top of things. So the first interview question is, do you want to include digital assets in your specific requests? And then it's going to be a matter of, what's the name of the digital asset? So it might be, for example, Tim, if you think about the database that you have in LinkedIn, or you regularly get, you regularly get over 1,000 people to your webinars. So with that one, that database that you're generating each and every webinar, who's actually going to get a copy of that? So you can actually say, well, a Zoom or all my databases or so on and so forth. Where to access? So we need to actually name the digital asset, where to access the username, and also the password. It may not be referable to that, but I'll tell you what, the password is really important. So it needs to be held in a safe and a secure place. And I would probably go down the track of, maybe if the executor's already signed off the will, they actually do that up front, which is pretty important. Additional access information. Again, the more I think about this, it's not a bad idea to do family protection trust with a lot of these digital assets to be held within there. Also, more importantly, instructions on how you want the digital asset administered. For example, you may want to indicate if you want an account memorialized or closed, or basically sold if that's possible. And you've just got to be careful too, for example, with things like Eventbrite, or you've got money owing to you. Where does that come out? Who actually gets access to that? So we can go down and we can build specific assets, much the same way if you have a look at our will, we can do specific gifts, and so there'll be specific digital assets. And we'll do a prompt for that, but again, it's not going to be in our basic will, it will be at the upper level will with testamentary trust. And the reason I say that, the basic will, we've done a sample of 5 suburban lawyers in Melbourne, and we've given them a price list which basically sits up on our site. For that, a basic will is $770. $330 for an EPOA. But once you start to get up to testamentary trusts or wills or the more sophisticated, you're looking around about $1,800. And quite clearly, once you start looking at this innovation level, if I just take you back to here, what happens is in anything like this, when you're at this forefront, this is when you can make some, this is when the high prices are paid. In fact, it's not even a bad idea to target those people who do have a lot of digital assets. Now, importantly, much the same way as we go back to, if I have a look at our EPOA, where we've got an ability, I can click off this and I can just have a power of attorney who just looks after my superannuation. And we will have one there that can look after just the digital. And so then you could have just a digital executor, which is absolutely crucial as well. So do you want a digital executor and can have some doing some and some not doing many? So it's completely different. It's going to be different from the primary executor. And generally you want someone who's going to be pretty tech savvy out of that whole process as well. So they'll be responsible for carrying out the terms of the digital assets in the will, management, distribution, and termination. And again, do we want this in the will? The problem about that is if there's a family provisions challenge and that whole estate is locked up for 5 or 6 years, if you remember the Andre Taylor case over in Western Australia, all the value that's sitting in our digital assets, which seems to me to go down over a period of time, the value is actually up front. So it may be well worthwhile that a family protection trust encompasses and holds those quite separately. Additional schedule, which we'll do there. So when we have that, we'll actually have a whole schedule that will print out all the digital assets, so serve as an inventory for the executor or the digital executor from that perspective. And like we've done in the past, a letter of instructions of what we'd like to do. If need be, we can make that letter of instructions binding on the executor, or we can just say, well, these are essentially our wishes and effectively what we're after. So, but beware, once you start opening this Pandora's box, people are actually going to understand the whole breadth of what they've got, and your loved ones are going to know that you've got this or that. Now, for example, LinkedIn, Xero, a lot of those issues are not a thing, but if you're trying to hide something like Bitcoin, which by its very nature tends to attract, I'm not going to say the nefarious, but has been used in the past for the nefarious, we've just got to be very careful about that one. Last thing they want to do is try to exhume your body, pull out your fingerprint if you need that for a Bitcoin exchange. So it's a very new field of law, and I know Ashleigh's doing a master's law at the moment, and she's doing a PhD after that on artificial intelligence and also digital assets as it applies to the law. So she's certainly up there, and I would wholly encourage you to have a dialogue there with her if you've got any ideas, particularly those of you who are really tech savvy. If you've got something you want to do, have a chat with Ash at I Love SMSF. She'll be sending some stuff around after this anyway. So it's relatively new. Well, you can't get any more new when Silicon Valley is actually thinking about it. But for us, it is a huge amount of value there. We've also got to be careful too in some of our Bitcoin accounts and others that once you die, your terms of service basically prevents your digital executive from accessing or managing the account. So this looks to me as though it's a premium bespoke service or concierge service that we can add to our higher level clients. And again, probably charge an extra $1,000 in order to do that digital will. As I said, an EPOA should be appointed to assist in this regard. We're going to be looking down that. So that's sort of giving you a bit of a base of where we are. We're starting to include it. I've already included it within our SMSF deed, and also it's encompassed in our discretionary trust deeds and our leading member deeds. Now we're starting to pull it out. So once we get our handle of it, get our process, our system, it'll pop up in our family protection trust if need be. It'll pop up in our SMSF will, and obviously our will with testamentary trust. So that's a quick, short walk around of where we're going. Thank you for all. Sorry about the sound, but obviously my sound's working. My computer is on the fritz. They only last so long these days. But anyway, it's a digital asset. It's one of those ones that you get it exactly how you want. You don't want to change it over. That's probably not a good idea. Anyway, thank you very much for your time today. And we'll send this out with a bit of copy and a few things from Ashleigh later on, and also an invitation for you guys to have a dialogue with Ashleigh in relation to digital assets. I think this is going to be a really special point of difference for us, and that's what we want. We want to be a point of difference before anyone else gets on top of it. It's Grant Abbott signing off.